This episode contains some of the creepiest Reddit stories in my opinion. Someone on Reddit asked, "What's the creepiest, scariest thing that you've seen, but no one believes you?" I was out with my friends and came home pretty late. I didn't want my parents asking questions, so I snuck in through the garage. The door was locked, but I had a key. I turned the key to unlock it, but then I heard an abrupt snap and the door locked again. I repeated this 3 times. Each time I unlocked the door relocked. Exasperated, I cried out, "Mom, it's me." Then I heard the door unlock. I opened the door, and no one was there. I saw something crouched in the road driving around one night. Its eyes glowed when my headlights hit it, so I assumed an animal of some sort, but when I got within about 15 feet of it, it stood up and looked like a girl standing there. I slammed on my brakes immediately, but suddenly the road was just empty. My friend in the car hadn't seen anything, but asked me a few minutes later if it looked like a girl. He'd apparently seen something similar with his sister a few weeks before in the exact same spot. I work on wind farms. Those remote areas are pretty freaky at night. You never know what's going to be out there. Pro tip: it's always mountain lions. One time I saw this gray thing run across the road in my headlights. It had long spindly legs and a fat gray body, and it didn't move right. It sort of loped along with the body going up and down like a seesaw. Freaked me right the hell out. I didn't want to get out of my truck that night. On the flip side, the sky at night out there. I was 15 years old. Was in law for a convention and Disneyland trip. There was a large group of us. My best friend and I were sitting next to each other on the bus. As we're driving from the airport, both my friend and I watch 2 people exit this house on the corner. One starts to run, and the other pulls a pistol out and shoots him down. Then shoots him again. We both looked at each other thinking, holy hell. We told some adults on the trip, and they told us we hadn't seen that, and it never happened. One time a door to my house's office slammed open when I woke up at 6 a.m. Naturally, it slowly opens on its own due to the weight distribution. It takes about 8 seconds to fully open, but it slammed open like it was forced. It was 6 a.m. in the middle of winter, so no windows were open to create a draft, and everyone was asleep. I was too tired for some ghostly stuff, so I peed and went back to sleep. I was staying in a very rundown Airbnb with my girlfriend, and we were both up late. I was trying to scare her since the building was super old, so I called out, "If there's a ghost, slam that door shut," and the ducking thing slams shut 2 seconds after I say that. We both were just quiet, we didn't know what to do. Likely a coincidence, but still enough to creep the duck out of you. About a year ago I was up watching movies late at night when I got hungry and went downstairs for a snack. My room is across from my daughter's room, and her door was open. As I was coming back upstairs I start turning left towards my room when I hear, clear as ever, "Daddy, can you close the door?" I turn around, don't say much, and just close it. Once I'm back in my room, I lie down to watch TV when it hits me, my daughter isn't there. She's spending the night at my parents'. I get up and go to her room and sure enough, it's empty. I woke up my wife, and she thinks I'm crazy. Says I was probably tired, and maybe it was the TV. I remember the voice so clear and coming in the direction of her room. It's very possible that it was just my head playing games, but it definitely made me question a few things. My wife and I are almost always together. It's rare that we spend more than a few hours apart. One time though, she went on a trip with her mother, so I had the house to myself for a week. On the second night, as I was dead asleep, I heard her voice ask, "Are you sleeping?" I jolted awake, groggily said yes, and fell back asleep. It wasn't till morning that I realized she wasn't there. I told her about it, and we both agreed that it was probably just the fact that I am so accustomed to her presence that when she was gone my brain just decided to edit her into my perception. Probably what happened with you, or ghosts. I worked at a small gas station in my small town when I was in my late teens. I was stocking sodas around back in the storage room. A man startled me, then apologized. He asked me for directions to Washington, D.C. I gave him the best directions I could. I sent him toward Philadelphia. He thanked me and went to his car. There was a kid about my age sitting in the passenger seat. He gave me the most evil stare I've ever seen. They pulled off, and I forgot about it and got back to work. I remember watching the news sometime later when they arrested the DC snipers. It was them for sure. Sent chills through my spine. I'm glad they spared me. I've only told a few people because I'm afraid people won't believe me. It still makes me feel a bit uncomfortable when I think about it. When I was about 12 or 13, I woke up in the middle of the night and smelled my father's cologne. Thought it was a little odd since he lived about an hour away but was too tired to care. Went back to sleep, woke up the next morning, and for some reason my mother didn't wake me up for school. My father had passed away the night before. Never told anyone for years about that night, but around the age of 23 I told my mom. She was glad to know that she wasn't crazy. That same night she got startled awake, and the dog was staring at the door wagging his tail. Almost like he was saying goodbye before fully leaving. I was dozing on the couch at my parents' place last year. Not comfortably because I was cold. Then I felt a wave of heat pass over me, which was pleasant enough until I felt these firm, pointed fingertips on my head, like something was standing behind me with its hands on my scalp. I was frightened, but then grabbed them and threw them off me. A few minutes later my mom came in and said she heard a door open and had got the feeling she should check on me. Probably a dream, but it was super creepy. Sleep paralysis is definitely creepy. I used to get them a lot in my teens when I slept on my back. I'm a side sleeper. The weight upon my chest would be just enough weight to wake me in a paralysis state. I would consistently have them almost every day at one point. One day I woke, which for those of us who knows the feeling of 1,000 pounds on our chest and unable to move, and watched my bedroom door slowly open like someone was peeping in on me. I wanted to cry for help thinking someone was coming in, but rather than seeing a person I watched this really creepy black silhouette of a person instead. It watched me for a good minute, then it closed the door. I then fell asleep. It turns out that silhouette was my brother trying to wake me up. I did some research and concluded that maybe the part of our brain that recognizes facial features was probably inactive and in sleep mode. Which was the reason why I saw a blank face. I still remember the vivid image of a no-faced man staring at me till this day. I was 6 and remember playing in my room, and my grandpa walks in and talks to me for a few minutes. After a bit, he gets up and tells me to be a good girl for mom, kisses me on the forehead, and walks out. Mom comes in about 5 minutes later hysterical and told me my grandpa had died overnight and we had to leave to go be with the family 2 states over where he lived. My wife and I were driving up through northern Arizona on Highway 89 between Flagstaff and Page. It was about 1 a.m. as we were on third shift at the time and often drove at night to avoid traffic. I saw a few sets of eyes glowing in my headlights a little ways up the road, so I let off the gas, slowing down to avoid hitting an animal in the road. When we drove by we saw several dogs, coyotes, on the side of the road and I hit the gas and drove by. After we passed my wife said one of them was running next to the car and I looked over and saw it as well, probably 20 feet off the shoulder of the road. I floored it and looked over and it stood up on its hind legs, that's the only way I can describe it, and kept pace with us for a couple seconds before turning away from the road and disappearing. This whole event probably lasted no more than 10 seconds, but it was seriously the most terrifying 10 seconds of my life. This was probably 20 years ago, and we still rarely talk about it. When I was little, between 6 and 11, I'd experienced what I later found out to be Alice in Wonderland syndrome. My blanket would feel like it was 6 inches thick, my room would grow longer as I looked down across my bed, my stuffed animal would get smaller, I could hear echoes of pretty much any little sound, and sometimes I felt like I was shrinking. I'm not sure why it stopped, but I'm definitely happy it did. About 4 years ago now, I was at work late dealing with some closing issues. It took longer than usual, so I ended up being the last to leave, it was pretty late at around 8 p.m. My place of work isn't in the middle of nowhere, nor is it in a bad part of town. It's in a normal nice area, but it is usually abandoned after 7 p.m. When I get outside, I hop in my car and prepare to pull out into the street. As I stop, look both ways, I suddenly notice two figures standing to my left on the sidewalk. Thing is, they were both dressed in whitish bodysuits from head to toe and rapidly approaching my car. As in headed straight for the driver's door with little room to mistake their intent, whatever the end goal might have been. I effing hoofed the gas down and turned down the street like a mother effer. My mirror showed them both moving my way on foot, which alarmed me since I live in the nearby neighborhood, barely a 5-minute walk from there. Didn't think beyond getting home and locking the door. Nobody else was on the street, near the parking lot, or anything. My town isn't known for dangerous types or shenanigans, but duck me if that didn't scare me. Two stranger holes in head-to-toe bodysuits? It wasn't Halloween, and they looked conspicuous as hell, but nobody else saw them. What the hell? Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. I hope you liked these stories as much as I did. Subscribe for more creepy stuff, and have a good night.